Hello and welcome back to the Thought Cloud podcast. Our goal of this conversation is to tell the story of an inspiring student to inspire other students. Today, our guest is Charlie Black. Charlie is at UCLA, where she is studying molecular cellular developmental biology, which she will dig in for us and tell us all about it, about why she got into this field, what she's hoping to do, what she's done, and what the future looks like. So, Charlie, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So we were talking before this when we were saying that your principal investigator, Dr. Ayala, was on this platform, which is super small world. You're in a really niche part of biology and how it intersects with different sciences. Tell us a little bit about that and how you got involved.
Well, it's actually kind of a funny story because I bought this book randomly at a bookshop like a couple of years back. And, I always wanted to be a reader, but school kind of like takes up a little bit too much time. So I didn't get around to it. But then I was at school last year and I like actually decided to read it. And it was called Life on the Edge. And it was this book, and I didn't realize this about quantum biology. And I feel like I was reading it and I kind of lost my mind a little bit because I feel like what I knew of biology was like this very neat box of like this happens and this doesn't happen. And then I opened the world of quantum and it was like, okay, I feel like everything that I know is wrong, or like I needed to be thought about in a different way. So I did a little good old Googling and I found out that at UCLA, one of like the only quantum biolabs opened up like 2 years ago, and it was Dr. Aiello's lab. And so I did a little email and they interviewed me and then I was just in. It
That's
was,
wonderful.
yeah.
Wonderful. Well, tell us a little bit about that. Like, what does that mean? The world opened up for you. It used to be, well, you can only do this and you can only do that, and then you saw this whole new world. What does that mean?
I felt like how science had been taught to me before, it was kind of like chemistry is in this box, physics is in this box, and bio is in this box. They are different sciences and they require different people to learn them. But when I did quantum bio, it was applying principles from physics, it was applying principles from chemistry, and it's applying principles from biology. And it kind of felt like it was like the separate instruments coming together and then they were all playing together. And I feel like I could actually see the narrative of how life exists. And that was like the first time I had seen them all just combined together. So that's why I was
Wow.
like mind blown, It was
Wow. No,
wild.
absolutely. Absolutely. And was
Yeah.
this before college or was this in college?
This is actually in college. I knew that I loved science before, but I didn't know that like there was this new aspect to it. Like I hadn't considered the fact that we might be I had assumed that we'd known so much and that we were good at so much and we had so much knowledge base because we're like humanity. And then I feel like I started to look more in depth into science. I'm like, wow, we know nothing. Like we have no idea what's going on.
Oh my gosh. Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah.
So that was in college. You knew you liked science and you came across this book. Was it recommended to you or did you find it on your own? How did you come across it?
I was in Carmel and they had this little secret bookshop. And I was like, I want to know more about science. And I just saw this, it was like the one science book they had there. And I was like, looks cool because they're talking about like how physics would apply. I didn't really love physics. It's a little naive of me to say, but I didn't really love physics because I didn't really get it. And then I was like, I'll give it a shot. Maybe this will change my mind. It changed my mind. It definitely changed my mind.
Needless to say, needless to say. And what
Yeah.
year was that? What year? How far along were you in your track? Had you already thought your major was decided before that?
Well, I was MCDB going into it because I did love science, but I was I was in the beginning of my sophomore year when I like made that realization, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the major stayed the same, but maybe
Mhm.
the intention with it changed, or how much changed in terms of what you hope to get out of those studies?
Well, in my first year, I feel like I was coming into it like a lot of people, many people, and I was like, I had been wanting to be a doctor my entire life. Like I had never wavered on that, but I was going into my first year and it was after quarantine, and I was like, maybe I don't know myself as much as I thought I did. So let me like give a little try to law because I loved bioethics. So I was like, okay, sure, why not? So I like joined mock trial and all these things, and I was like trying to delve into that. but I didn't really feel the passion for it. But I didn't know if I felt the passion for medicine anymore because I was like, it had been years since I got to actually like do something with it or do anything cool because we were all locked up. So that was it, it changed my intention to say that like I re fell in love with science in a way that I thought I loved it before, but it was like now it feels like it's everything to me, if that
Wow.
makes sense.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So then doctor isn't the path anymore, is what you're saying.
It is, but it's like yes and if that makes sense. Like yes, I want to be a doctor, but and I want to actually partake in making the science that we then translate to patients.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So how does that look then unfolding? Like what is it, medical school and then research like an MD PhD, or what do you what's your idea of that?
Well, that's the question that I'm currently trying to decide upon, but I think MD PhD is it's looking better and better to me because I just like yes, it is an 8 year long education, but I feel like I would be making a decision that was based off of me thinking about how much time I have in the world. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be old as hell when I get to be a doctor then. Maybe I should like not do that. But I feel like that's I don't want to take the safe route because I don't want to be like 80 and I don't want to be like looking back being like, gosh, if I just done that MD PhD, so many more doors would have opened for me. You know what I mean?
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's a tough decision. I'm sure you'll make the right decision too. I think a lot of people that do the PhD are like, "Oh my gosh, why am I doing it?" And then they're like, "Cuz this is why. I love it." You know, they have that
Yeah,
little moment of doubt, but then they dig into it. And actually, there was a guy on here who did
definitely.
an MD PhD as well. So maybe that'd be worth a discussion just to hear what his thoughts are. But
Yeah,
no, that's exciting. That's really exciting. So you've got a newfound passion for what you love. And
yeah.
how does coursework apply to this? I guess that's the next kind of question is, do you find that it complements it well, or do you find that your learning is having to be done mostly outside of the classroom in your research? How does that all come together?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of now I'm in my third year, right? I'm in my third
Mhm.
year of college, so I have covered basics of bio, covered all of the bio, covered all of the chemistry, covered all the physics, and like done biochemistry. I've got all the foundational stuff down. So that I feel like was absolutely necessary for me to be able to do any type of research. Because if I didn't have that super strong foundation, and it's not just the learning, it's the being able to apply yourself and like do things despite them not being interesting.
Right,
Because yes, things are interesting, but they're not always super interesting and they're not going to be interesting forever. So
right,
you have to be able to like push through that boundary. But other than that, I feel like in research, you can know everything or you can think that you know everything. You can take all the classes in the world. And if once you actually enter a lab, unless you've done classes pertaining to that specific subject that a lab is doing, you're going to have to basically like toss out half the knowledge you know and replace it with like reading papers and developing your own knowledge. And it's like this whole learning curve that you have to deal with.
gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. And so this field, to kind of dig into the field that you're getting your degree in, MCDB, tell us
Mhm.
about that. What's the goal of MCDB? What kind of foundation does it give you to then go apply?
I feel like I picked MCDB because I felt like it was a microscopic lens on life. Because I think that while I do love medicine, it's looking at the whole picture and it's like how those processes make an output instead of what those processes are to begin with. And I know I was going to spend most of my life working on the whole picture. And I work better if I know like each step. Like if I can know biologically on a cellular level why a disease happens, that is never leaving my brain because that is ingrained forever.
Right.
So I wanted to know like individual like cells what goes on there because we don't know actually know a lot about it. But that was why I picked NCDB, and that's what I think it focuses on most.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now you're going even deeper.
Yeah, definitely.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, you've been busy outside of the classroom as well. So this summer you were an intern, a research intern at UCSF.
Yes.
Tell
Yeah.
us about that. How did you decide that's what you're going to do this summer? What was the goal of that internship? What did you get to focus on? What did you get to enjoy? What was that like?
Well, it was actually entirely a shot in the dark, again, like every research position I seem to have done. But I had planned to stay at UCLA and I had planned to take more courses just to get a little bit ahead, study for my MCATs and stay at Qubit. But I was like, maybe I'll send a couple emails to labs that seem interesting because who knows? I was like, I have a couple extra minutes after my finals ended, and I was like, yeah, I'll just send it through. And Dr. Clellan, she actually responded to me, and she was like a little hesitant at first because they were at max capacity for interns, but I convinced her a little bit. Like she will, I kind of talked her into it. And once they said yes, I was like, all right, I now have to cancel all my plans because I just felt like it was an opportunity that I would regret for the rest of my life if I had minimized it or tried to do like a month instead of the 3 months.
Right.
I just needed all of it,
You
you know?
needed all of it. You needed all of it. And
Yeah.
SF is your home.
Yes. So I was like, I can go home too. I can
Yeah,
see my family and all that.
absolutely. Absolutely. So that's a hard thing to do is get a research position. I mean, I know a lot of kids are applying, they go through the portals and they're just like, oh my gosh, it's like a lottery ticket, right?
Yeah.
So you've had good luck with great labs. How do you think that you've been able to set yourself up to have that great luck?
Honestly, I don't know how much luck it is. I think I've emailed 200 labs.
Wow.
Like I have it is not easy to get lab research, especially at a big institution like UCLA. It is not easy. And I've gone through the portals. My personal opinion, they're useless unless you have previous experience because there's nothing to differentiate yourself against because you're going to be going up against kids who have been like at UCSF for like 3 years or something, or they've been doing research and then running their own projects and then they're looking for labs and they're applying. There's hardly any ground to compete against.
Hmm.
So you need to find something that you are passionate about. Like find some research. It can't just be any research, I don't think. And if you convey that passion to the person who's conducting it, they are a lot more receptive to it. Like if you, because in my emails, I always wrote like a little mini essay about why their work was interesting. And I was like that, I started to do that more towards the end. And that's when I started to get research positions, was when I like really conveyed how much I cared about it. And I didn't take no for an answer. And I think that's
Yeah.
very important sometimes because they don't want to train people. They don't want to take the extra money that it takes to like train all the students that need training. But if you're like, I will be there and I will do as much as I can, they they want students with passion because there's so many kids who are just doing it to get the research on their med school app.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah,
So you'd look at what they were doing, you'd write a little bit about why it was interesting to you,
exactly.
and then they'd get back to you with a, I don't know, Charlie, maybe you seem like you're a good fit. And then you'd convince even further. Is that kind of what that looked like? Or did you
Sometimes,
have any
yeah.
people that were like, oh, absolutely, like hop on board?
I had one person who said absolutely hop on board. And that was because before I'd found the quantum bio one, I had found another biophysics lab. And I am a little reluctant of the ones who are like absolutely hop on board because I feel like that usually means that they have a large basis of undergraduate researchers. And that might be exactly what you're looking for. You might be looking just to get some hours in. It depends on each person. But for me, I wanted to like actually do things and I wanted to like be able to develop the skills in order to do things on my own at some point. So I wanted to find someone who didn't have so many undergraduate researchers, or they were kind of just beginning. Because both of the labs that I've been in they were like not just started, but they'd started in the last couple of years. So they didn't have many interns.
Hmm.
I think those are the ones to target because once you have like a million undergraduate researchers, like you're going to be running PCRs all day for like
Yeah.
hours at an end. And that's not like it's great experience, sure, but it's not exactly your goal if you want to go
Yeah.
into research.
No, you're just kind of, yeah, doing the automated
Plug and
tasks.
chug in. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So this summer, what was the focus of the lab? What was the focus at UCSF?
So the lab overall is a neurodegenerative disease lab. They mostly focus on like ALS and Alzheimer's. I particularly worked on it's a stem cell lab, so I worked on CRISPR, stem cells, and brain delivery mechanisms. So like I don't know if you know anything about it, but things like LNPs, RNPs. The Pfizer Moderna vaccine is an LNP. It's different ways to get the CRISPR like editing techniques into your cells.
Okay.
That was kind of overall, I guess, what I did.
Gotcha. And that was for neurodegenerative diseases. So problems that people have
Yes,
with their brains, Alzheimer's, for example. And then you were
exactly.
delivering what to the brain or testing what kind of deliveries? Were you testing the deliveries or were you testing the thing you were delivering?
Well, we were testing the delivery itself because you can't really, there's not much literature on CRISPR editing neurons because they are infamous for not wanting to. And it's like kind of believed that neurons may not be editable.
Hmm.
So we were kind of just testing out a ton of different particles to see how they were taken up by different cell types. Like we tried it on stem cells, we tried it on different types, just to see what could be more effective. And that's just like the first barrier to entry. Then you have to develop the more CRISPR technology for the actual specific issue you're trying to figure out. But overall, getting that first step is kind of that's what would limit the rest of it. So you need to work
Right.
on that. Yeah.
Right. So they think neurons, they they have the feeling that neurons could be uneditable. Is that that seems like
No, we think that they can. We think that
okay.
like you can. We just don't have the technology for it yet
Oh, okay. I see what you're
because
saying.
they've developed technology to edit other parts of your body, like the LNP, for example. It's not editing, but it is a particle that goes into your cells and they get taken up and it changes like the expression of proteins and such.
Mm-hmm.
But the blood-brain barrier,
Mm-hmm.
things don't like to go across that. The brain is very selective, and neurons are very precious. I'll call them precious. They like to not take things in. But I I think that they're editable, and I can't talk like too much about it, but I do think that they're editable.
Yeah,
That's my belief.
I think they are too. And I don't know as much as you, but I just would like to think
Yeah.
that they are. Just for the
For
sake
the
of if
good of
I ever have an
humanity. Yeah.
issue. Yeah, exactly. I'd like to think that they're editable. That's funny.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So you got a great experience at that lab. And that was pretty
Phenomenal.
focused on neurons. That was really selective, really specific. At the
Yeah.
Qubit lab, what are you focusing on there?
We are focusing more on cancer cells is what I worked with, and muscle cells usually. We were doing studies of low-level magnetism on the proliferation and migration of cells. Unfortunately, my time is going to be ending at Qubit shortly, but like by the end of this month.
Hmm.
But yeah, that was what we were doing for a while.
Wonderful. So, as far as it goes with the type of focus that you held at each lab, what was favorable about one versus the other, or what were the pros of each and the cons of each?
Yeah, they were drastically different experiences. But I think Qubit was more so kind of seeing how a lab works and understanding all of the steps that it takes to get to the experimental level. Because I joined, they didn't have many biologists. I was one of the only ones on the team. So I was there for us, like trying to figure out how to set up a cell culture room. And I was like figuring out how to culture cells and like getting all the information for that and setting up how we could even do the experiments. So I got to actually contribute to that. And it's a rare experience to be able to have because usually you're in a lab with people who are very much more knowledgeable about a subject than you. But when you're coming in and there's like, yeah, there's a difference in knowledge level, but it's closer. So you can actually
Mm-hmm.
like contribute. But at Cleland Lab, it was like the level was here and I was coming in with this knowledge and I had to like try to match that gap as best as I could over a summer. And that's not
Wow.
easy.
No, no, definitely not easy. What do you
Yeah.
think helped you acclimate?
Time. A
Time.
lot of papers, lot of papers. I think that I have read so many papers that my eyes hurt reading papers. Like, I just needed to know what I was doing and just continuously doing it over and over again. It gets a little repetitive, but even just like the techniques for culturing and pipetting and all that, I was allowed to take home like some of the tubes, like an Eppendorf tube and all that, so I could practice taking them off with one hand. And I would just do that when I was like studying for other things, just so I could get the technique right, so I didn't screw
Oh
up the
my
experiment.
goodness.
This takes a lot of time. You
That does
have to be
take a
able to
lot of
like,
time.
yeah, fixate on what you're doing
Wow. Wow,
and
wow, wow.
a lot of time.
Well, it sounds like
Yeah.
you got a great experience. I mean, that's, hey, going into the next position that you hold, I feel like you're gonna have just so
Yeah.
much more, I don't know, agility about you probably. I think with each
Yeah.
experience it builds, and that's huge. And I haven't spent much time in, research labs, actually performing
Yeah.
procedures, but that's neat. That's really a unique experience in both places.
It was utterly life altering. And Dr. Cleland, the PI of the Cleland lab at UCSF, I feel like I'm probably going to be going back next summer again because they've been like, you can, and I'm like, I will. Don't worry, I'll be there. But I feel like seeing a woman is especially because she's an MD-PhD, and her story sounds like very similar to what I went through, where she got to the path where she was like on the cusp of becoming a neurosurgeon. She was like, I actually really care about the behind the scenes as well. So she went into research and she did her MD PhD. And it's just amazing being able to talk to her and really talk through. Like, I feel like she kind of it hasn't been forever since I've known her, but I really hope that I can develop a strong relationship because she feels like a mentor to me, where I'm getting to be surrounded by people who are like on the cusp of real science, like doing some
Right.
actually really insane stuff. And for her to be like, I think that you can succeed at this, it's like I'm like bowing down, you know what I mean? I'm like, I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, please.
Yeah. No, that means the world. That absolutely means the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Golly. Well, I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will, especially if you're going back. I think that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I think about your path, like, how does that make you feel then? Having seeing somebody that you look up to going through a similar route as you, does that give you more clarity one way or the other? I'm sure it does.
To a degree, yes. But she's also extraordinarily cognizant of the fact that it's not an easy path, and it's probably one of the hardest paths you can take.
Hmm.
And she repeatedly was like, if you can at all see yourself doing anything in life, I recommend that you do that instead. If you can be happy any other way, do it.
Hmm.
Like, and that's what a lot of people say, I think. But no one's really opaque about it. No one's
Right.
opaque about like if you have interest in something else, if you can at all envision it, do something else because committing to doing MD PhD to being like a physician scientist is you everything that comes before everything else. That needs to come before like family, that needs to become before having children. What else would you want in life? And you need to be certain of it.
Yeah,
So it wasn't that she gave me clarity, but she forced introspection on myself as to like,
absolutely.
is this the end all be all for me? Is this something that I really, really need to go into? And I had not had somebody sit down and be like, you need to think about this. Like, you really need to decide because this is kind of like the make or break moment. Because both my parents are like, whatever makes you happy. And they don't get it because
The
they're not
best
doctors and
parent
they've not
answer
studied.
ever, right? The best parent
Yeah,
answer ever.
right. Yeah.
You're like, thanks for all the help.
Yeah, I'm like, that doesn't help, but okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Wonderful.
wild.
Wonderful. Well, that's going to be a fun decision to have in the next. This is your junior year, right? So you've got, how long do you
Yes.
have to make that? How long until you have to make that decision?
Well, there's a it's like a vague. I'm studying for the MCATs right now, so depending on how those go, I'll either be applying next cycle or I'll be taking gap years and doing research or something in the meantime. But I think if I'm talking seriously from my heart, I think that while I'm saying that it's still not, I'm still making a decision, everyone is telling me not to do it, but I don't think that there is a way that I won't. I think that I will end up doing it. I feel like that's what's going to end up happening.
Well, that's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. Hey, that means you really love it. So that's really what's important. Well, I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. I love that. Um, as far as that goes, we've talked about what you want to do after college, kind of your direction in deciding that.
Mhm.
Medical, school. Let's talk about that really quickly. If you had to choose, hey, this is what I want to study. This is the kind of, field that I want to go into. I know that a lot of people going into medical school don't really even know until rotations. And I'm
Yeah.
just curious, with your research experience, do you feel like that's made it more clear as to what you'd like to focus on? Or do you feel like there's still a lot more exploring to do before you could even say this is the field of medicine I'd like to practice?
I mean, I'm going to give myself a buffer in case I change my mind.
Mhm.
But rotations may change my mind. But I do think doing research, I was certain that I wanted to do surgery. I was certain that that was what I wanted to do. And it only solidified it because doing research is a lot of working with your hands, but also thinking on your feet while you're working with your hands and being like, especially in cell culture, I feel like it's like doing surgery because you have to be very precise with everything and it's all very measured, all very sterile. You have to be
Mhm.
very careful with everything. And I feel like when I went in there for the cell culture, I just sometimes had to be in there for like 6 hours straight. It was like the time where I could think, and it was a time where my brain felt clear and then nothing else mattered. And yeah, I don't know how I could do medicine that's not surgery. I think it's probably going to end up being surgery. Whether it's neuro or cardio, that's a different decision. That's going to be decided by probably the research surrounding it at the moment.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm pretty
Wonderful.
solid on it.
I love that. Well, hey, yeah, get the scalpel. Here we go. Cut it out.
Yeah.
I love it. All righty. Well, hey, we're gonna take a quick little break and we're gonna jump back
Yeah.
into it. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we are back and we were just chatting with Charlie about her path, what she's studying, why she loves it, what she thinks she's gonna do, how she's going through those decisions, and
Mhm.
all the fun that she's had along the way. We're gonna close it up now with a rapid fire round. So Charlie, whatever comes to your mind, shoot from the hip, and let's get into it. You ready?
Absolutely.
Cool. All righty. First question. You've already said this in the interview, but what is your favorite book?
Well, it's actually Fahrenheit 451. I know Life on
Oh,
the Edge was pretty good,
okay.
but
Change
it
up.
was like one of the first ones that was like, I don't know. It made me think about things a little bit more in depth than
Yeah.
I had before.
In
But
Fahrenheit
yeah,
451, that's George Orwell, right?
that's Ray Bradbury,
Oh,
actually.
thank you. Yeah, Ray Bradbury,
Yeah,
which is kind of like reminiscent of 1984 in a weird sense, right? Aren't there
yeah,
similarities there?
they are. Yeah, and Ray
Yeah.
Bradbury actually wrote it at UCLA. So
Did he really?
yeah.
Wow. And that's just so everyone is aware of that. That's a great book. Um, Remind us what that's about.
Well, it's like to summarize it quickly, it's kind of like a world where books are illegal, and it's just kind of a dystopian reality, and it kind of explores a lot of different subject matter in that, like censorship and all that fun stuff.
Yeah,
But it's kind of it's eerily similar, and that's why I kind of liked it was that he was kind of really close about some things that would happen in the future, and I felt like it was so. It took me so long to get through it because you had to like really you had to, in depth read those lines. You couldn't just like skim over them.
right. No, that's a really great book. Really great book. You're right. It is relevant for today. Go read it.
Yeah.
Next question. Who's your most influential role model?
That one I did kind of answer. I think I would have to say at right now it's probably Dr. Cleland, just because we're on the same wavelength. She reads my mind, I read hers sometimes.
I love that. Absolutely. Next question. What is the most stressful part about being a student day in and day out?
Balance,
Balance.
balancing life, making sure that you have time to like feed your academic self, but also feed your self because I know sometimes like I will misbalance that very heavily. Like I will forget that I'm a human being that has needs. And then I kind of remember and I was like, oh, gotta go deal with that again. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. No, I think it's I mean, you build a routine and then you're like, what just threw that routine out of whack? Like how I just
Oh gosh.
ate that. You're like, where did that go? I
I
feel
need
you.
my routines desperately.
Yeah, routines are good. I love it.
They are.
Um, Next question. Who is your favorite person that you've ever studied with?
Probably my best friend, Myra, because she was my roommate first year, random roommate, but she loves science in the way that I do, where she like sees all of the parts moving together and she just like thinks it's super cool. And everyone thought I was a nerd in high school when I like tried to not talk about it all the time, like talk about how cool I thought science was. But this is the first time where I could like full nerd out with somebody and really like enjoy talking about it. So she always, I love studying with her.
That's awesome. Shout out Myra.
Shout out.
A1 homie. All right, next question. What is the most meaningful way that students can help each other?
I think being open about how you're really doing, because I think especially in a like a higher tier university, there's this big perception that you need to like put up this wall and be like, yes, I'm doing a million and one things. And I'm like, I never have a moment for myself, but I'm always good and I'm forever good. And actually, like, I'm doing amazing. So don't even worry about me. But nobody's doing good, especially in the beginning of college. Nobody can handle all of the stress. Well, we are 20. We don't know ourselves. We don't know how we deal with stress. No one knows what's going on. We all are like running around without our heads cut off, but nobody will talk about it. So everybody feels like they're doing it alone. And I feel like that's the most harmful thing that you can do is project this sense of false confidence and false assertiveness when somebody else isn't doing well. Like people are like, "Oh, I'm not doing well." And they're like, "I'm actually fine." That is
Yeah,
really harmful. It's not good.
yeah. No, absolutely. I think I've definitely been there before too. And I've probably been on both sides of it, right? Where it's like,
I have too. Yeah.
you kind of like fake it till you make it, and then you're like, wait, I can't fake
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great
I'm
advice.
definitely guilty of it.
Totally. Totally, totally. All right, next question. This is a big one. What's your biggest hope to accomplish during your time on Earth?
That's difficult. I feel like I have two answers. I feel like I have one answer that is not for myself, and then one answer that is selfish. The first one is I really want to get a Nobel Prize. And I know that's a really like that's a super lofty dream, but I'm talking like perfect world. Like my grandma, she was recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's and she's kind of like declining. But it's been her goal and her dream of me ever since I started like doing okay in school. She's like, "You're gonna get a Nobel Prize, and I want to be there because it's gonna be in Sweden because she's Swedish and the Nobel Prize is Swedish." And she's like, "Oh my God, that's what I need." And my mom is now the same way. So I feel like if I could do that, like that would maybe like paying back for all the times that I can't like be there because of studies. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But for myself, I would just want to be able to make some lasting contribution to science, like something that lasts more than just one patient. You
Uh-huh.
know, like one surgery, one patient. But I want to do something that's like it impacts more than just one person at a time.
Right. No, absolutely. I love that. Well, I think both of those are selfless. I think both of those. I mean, getting a Nobel Prize, like that's you've done something that can so many, as well as what you're saying, like helping, not just one patient, but many. So I'm rooting you
Yeah.
on, Charlie. You got it. You got it in the bag. I'll be there on the
Oh
dot.
gosh,
Vote
that's
Charlie.
terrifying. No pressure.
I love it. Okay. Next question. What do you think the purpose of undergraduate studies are?
I feel like if you'd asked me that a year ago, I would have like gone on a little rant about how they're useless, especially if you're pre-med and be like, oh my gosh, you don't need to die. We're learning nothing that pertains to medicine. And like, we're actually going to learn all the diseases and just memorize them. So it doesn't matter. I, if I talked to myself, I would smack myself in the face for saying that. I don't understand how I thought that. It was just naivety, but it kind of lets you explore everything because I know I got a chance because I did undergrad. I got a chance to make sure that I like knew that I didn't want to do law. Who knows? If I went into medicine straight off the bat, straight into med school, would I have dropped out to like pursue law and then realize that I actually hated it and then had to try to figure out to go back? I think it lets people have a buffer to kind of round themselves out as a human being. Because if
Hmm.
you specialize too soon, too quickly, you're going to be lacking in so many things that can supplement your ability to succeed. Like if you want to go into research but you can't articulate yourself about your science, it's almost useless because if you can't communicate what you're doing and if you can't really like find a way to get people to understand it and you can't properly teach it, it's not it's not as useful as if you could do that. So
Right.
undergraduate like lets you build up skills in multiple areas, not just one.
I love that. I really like that. Okay. Next question for you. What is your top piece of advice that you could give to students who are still early in their educational journey and trying to figure it out themselves?
Don't be afraid to try something you hate because I think people form these conceptions early. They're like, I hate this subject, or like, I really dislike this subject. I don't understand how it could be interesting. I can't count how many times I've said that about a subject, and then it's turned out to be one of my biggest passions ever. I feel like I would have told you a couple years ago, oh my gosh, the brain is boring. It looks the same. Like it all looks like one organ. It doesn't matter. And then I ended up joining a neuroscience lab, and now I'm thinking about being a neurosurgeon. And I hated physics, and now I'm wanting to be a quantum biologist and like work in quantum as well. And like you don't know. You have to understand that you don't know things. So follow passion, but also let yourself explore things that don't necessarily have passion and knock them off after you've given them a chance.
I like that. I like that. Really good advice. Absolutely. Well, Charlie, this has been wonderful chatting with you and just learning about you, learning about your path, all that you've been able to share with other people. Where can they continue to follow you or keep up with your work or somehow stay in the loop with you?
I think that probably for my work, the best option is LinkedIn. It's going to be underneath my name, Charlie Black, but my last name is actually Sjogren-Black. So you won't find Charlie Black because there's like a million and one of us, but the last name is Sjogren dash Black. That's how you spell it.
I love it. We'll have that listed on the title so anyone can go find you
Oh
on
yeah, gotcha.
LinkedIn. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It's been unbelievable.
It's been great. Thank you so much for having me and letting me just kind of like rant about the things that I love.
Absolutely.